I appreciated the dress because I felt like she kind of went out of her way to be very overly demure. If you
that would have stood out like a sore thumb amongst all the other things,
Okay.
is, I think, naive.
maybe stood out, but also been squashed like all of her feelings before. Welcome to Come Back with Erica Cobb, where we are continuing our recap of the Harry and Meghan Netflix documentary. We are going to be talking episode 4. I have my girl, my co-host from Daily Blast Live, Tory Shulman in the building.
Cheerio, cheerio.
Cheerio. And by building, I mean my house, because we're back in front of the fireplace. And today I chose to wear a 3-piece cashmere jumpsuit. So we will be melting by the end of this episode.
With goodness.
Dripping with goodness. Okay, so we open with royal wedding after royal wedding after royal wedding. So it is Elizabeth and Philip, Charles and Diana, William and Kate, and one of these things is doing its own thing, Harry and Meghan. Okay, so first of all, what did you think of putting all of the weddings together, like one apiece?
I think it was very clear to show which one of these is sort of not like the other one. And I gotta be honest though, when I saw Charles walking her down, I was sort of touched by that.
Yeah.
I was really touched, and I was at the time too. I thought that was, and it just seemed like, I remember being there. I was there like a few days before in Windsor, and it was just like a very exciting time.
Yeah. It felt like when we saw that in real time, Charles walking Meghan down the aisle, I felt like that was a signal.
A
to
statement.
say, yeah,
Totally.
you know, not only am I accepting this woman into our family, like I am going to step in by proxy for her father.
So chivalrous.
Yeah,
I thought. It was a lovely moment.
It was a signal, but not for how things ended up going. So we hear that Meghan had a conversation with one of Queen Elizabeth's private secretaries of over 20 years, who described her as a foreign organism.
Yeah. This analogy was interesting.
Yeah, and at first I was like, oh, this is gonna go way left.
Yeah.
But then it turned out that what she was saying is that, you know, people are like, oh, she doesn't look like us, she doesn't act like us, what is she doing here? But soon you'll see, they'll understand and everything will come together.
Right.
And so I thought that that was Meghan's way of giving a nod to say, hey, I was, you know, there were some glimmers of hope. There were some people who were giving me words of encouragement.
I think I would even say Her Majesty. I feel like she felt comfortable and laughed and had a grandmotherly type feel with her. I liked that. I thought that was nice. I think it was, I think personally it was William and Charles that has given her the most problems. We'll see.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
So we talk about the wedding. Meghan talked about the day of the wedding. I thought this was so cute that she was like, all I wanted was a mimosa, croissant, and to play Going to the Chapel.
I know, and how like cheesy, you know? It's like, and then it was like, go to the, because I'm thinking, what does she do before? Like, what is, everybody's there, what does she do? And it was very normal and very cute.
What did you do the morning of your wedding?
Oh, I had a lot of mimosas.
You had a lot of mimosas.
And like, I did get a little bit, what did you do? I got a little nervous. I remember getting a little bit like panicky a little bit. It was the only time I did.
Well, so when Anthony and I got married, it was a little different because first of all, we had been legally married because we had our wedding in Mexico.
Right.
So that took the pressure off of that.
Right.
And we had those intimate moments because we were legally married.
That's nice.
So I felt like Mexico was kind of like me taking care of everyone else, really wanting people to enjoy themselves. I didn't want people to be in the room all day with like, you know, some people got their hair and makeup done and stuff, but I didn't have bridesmaids. I didn't want anyone to feel like they had to cater to me all day. So it was kind of like, we sat down, we had mimosas while people were getting ready, and then everyone kind of went off and did their thing, and it was just me and my mom. And then I came down with my mom. So it was very calm.
And touching.
Yeah.
I like
And
that.
I wouldn't change anything about that other than maybe have like one more friend there because my wristband thing that I was wearing did break. Yeah, and my mom and I couldn't fix it, but that's neither here nor there. So Meghan describes driving to the chapel and not expecting there to be so many people in the streets. So there were 150 people at Windsor lining the streets.
It was insane when we were there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just like, it's an event. It's an event.
And we all see the celebrities, obviously Serena, Oprah, the Clooneys, the Beckhams, all the besties.
All the besties. the best of the best. And Amal looked fabulous in yellow.
Yeah. I loved, and Serena talked about this in her documentary, Serena Williams, of course, that she had her hair braided and that she was going to wear braids to this royal wedding.
Rad.
So seeing her in that shot all these years later, knowing the backstory for her, was very cool. Harry talked about the expectations for Diana's boy, and I thought that this was interesting because we've heard this before, that when Diana passed away, the UK kind of rallied around Prince William and Prince Harry.
And mostly Harry.
Yeah.
Harry was they were very protective of Harry.
As if he were all of their sons.
Absolutely.
So he said that after William was, quote, married off, then once he got married, they were kind of like,
we did our job.
All right, job well done. It's all good.
Yes, and that's why I think, and I just want to keep this in your minds as you listen to the rest of this podcast, the belovedness that the British people have for Harry. I want to keep that theme going, even though we start to hear maybe some different things. I think that is, for many Brits, and I say this knowing I'm not one, Harry has been, William of course, but Harry was the youngest, that little one walking behind that coffin. The love for Harry, I don't think, has gone down, and especially after this Netflix, I hope will go up. I don't know, maybe only in America, but I certainly only fell more for him.
So there is a disparity there, and I wasn't going to bring
the critics are like,
right.
in Britain.
I wasn't going to bring this up, but since we're having that conversation about us not being British and having this conversation about the monarchy and the British media as Americans, so a woman hit me up today and on Instagram, and she said, with all due respect, I do think that this is a British issue and you as an American shouldn't have an opinion about it.
Wow, that's an interesting take.
And so my feeling is, first of all, Meghan's American. She also
Great point. I would never have thought of that.
well, she's American.
That is such a great point.
She's also a woman of color.
Right.
I tend to be very vocal about people that are in minority groups that are not necessarily able to speak for themselves. And there was a time when Meghan wasn't allowed and just couldn't speak for herself. And I have always been talking in defense of Meghan since the very beginning. So although we're talking about the monarchy and that's not how our systems operate, I do think that this story is far more universal. And also, even for it to be considered just a British issue wouldn't be accurate at all because the Commonwealth encompasses many different countries.
It's like 2.8 billion people. Yeah, I got to be honest. All of this is a global issue.
Yeah.
This is a global issue. You can say it isn't. And that's such a cute, okay, that's a cute little noise. Yeah, I would just say, like, even when Diana says I'm the people's princess, that meant outside of Britain too. Like, she was, I know that might sound rough, but what I mean by that is Diana touched all of us, and by all of us I mean globally.
Yeah.
And then this whole thing became global, especially with the American part of Meghan Markle. This I don't think is only a British issue, but it is good to point out where what angle you're seeing it from, like what lens you're coming from. And again, Brits have had their monarch since 1066. That's like 1066.
Yeah.
They have a strong support and a backbone of this that we cannot understand. We're a baby country.
Right.
We're a baby country.
Americans
We just
are
don't have
often
that.
referred to as the teenagers
We're
of
tiny.
the globe.
Exactly.
So when we do things and you know, it's very much, and it's kind of like when we went through our adolescence and our teen
Yeah,
years.
right.
Like there are a lot of things that it's so new to a very new country, and I don't think that people really acknowledge
No.
that as much as we should.
Especially with the monarchy. That was the
Right.
backbone of the British Empire for 1,000 years. You can't express that as an American, I don't think.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, okay, let's get back to
Yeah,
the
yeah,
wedding
yeah.
because I was interested in your take on the dress because obviously it had to be flawless. I know you worked in bridal.
Very many, 2.5 years, everyone. I'm an expert at a great discount sample sales store in LA. But I worked with a ton of brides. I will say this, I did not like the dress.
Really?
Yes. Did not like the material. I did not like the cut. I didn't think it was fit well. I liked her veil a lot. Mm-hmm. Did not like the dress. I liked her off the shoulder, and that was about it.
See, I thought that the
Is that
dress.
bad? I feel
No,
bad.
no, no, no.
I never liked the dress.
I appreciated the dress. Would I have worn it myself? No, but I also am not built like that,
Right.
so it wouldn't have been flattering on me at all.
Right.
I appreciated the dress because I felt like she kind of went out of her way to be very overly demure. If you look at some of the other dresses with Diana or
Middleton,
Queen
Kate
Elizabeth or
Middleton.
Kate Middleton, they had a more regal
Yeah.
like component to it, and I felt like Meghan went out of her way to be like, I am, you know, what they said later in terms of them being kind of accessories to the main players. I felt like that dress, I felt like it was elegant, it was understated, but it could be understated because she is so striking, and no matter what she wore, she was going to look striking and beautiful. I thought the dress was a choice to say, like, I understand this is my wedding, but this is not all about me. And that was a selfless choice.
Okay, and I can hear that because when I had brides that were like older and they'd been through some weddings, they didn't want the certain dress that you normally see. But you can do demure in a way that I think is more flattering. I think it looked plain, and I think it covered too much, and I think it was matronly. And I say that because I think she's such a beautiful girl. I also don't love her hairstyle that day. I didn't love the headband tiara, but I do understand that she was trying to work with her fashion to make a statement. We didn't bring this up, but I wanted to. She often wore colors that I thought blended in, things like that she said, and I could see her doing that with her dress, trying to be demure. I just thought it made her look. It was ill-fitting. I just didn't like it. I didn't like it.
Well, we're going to disagree.
Yeah,
on
we
that.
are.
Okay.
Yeah, we are. Fight me.
So Meghan talks about Prince Charles and how he's very charming.
Yeah,
And she
yeah.
told him, you know, she lost her dad in all of this and asked her to walk her down the aisle. And she kept saying, you know, there's this idea that Harry and Meghan are really good at finding each other in the chaos. That's been a
Yeah.
theme the entire time. And you see that. So let's get to the gospel choir,
Gosh, I
child.
was going to say, when do we get to the good stuff?
The gospel choir.
The Kingdom Choir.
The Kingdom
Kingdom
Choir
Choir.
singing Stand By Me. I loved, there was a point where one of her friends, Drew, said that, and I thought this was hilarious.
With Oprah?
He goes, yeah, it was me, Idris Elba, and Oprah. We had a chuckle about the gospel choir, and I was like, Drew, who are you?
I have no idea who that was.
I was like, that is the most
Bougie statement.
I honestly, I laughed so hard because I would say something like
Of
that.
course,
Who
it's
wouldn't
extra.
say something like that?
If you had chuckled with those two other people,
Yes.
and then we had a nice chuckle.
Yeah, like so casual, like, so yeah, it was Idris Elba,
Right.
Oprah, me, you know, we were just laughing.
Good
like,
times had by
I
all.
laughed so hard about that.
Oh, man.
Because obviously, you know, putting in Meghan's heritage, and were you surprised to learn that Prince Charles was a part of that?
I'm so annoyed you just said that. I was going to say to you, what is the biggest surprise you took from that? And it was that Charles had found them.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that dude knows gospel choirs?
Or taking or at least, you know, being a part of finding the best gospel singers
Yes.
from all over.
And taking ownership of that. I thought it was lovely.
You know,
I didn't know that or expect that at all, and I thought that was a big Easter egg, too.
But also, we've seen footage of Charles like breakdancing. Like, what happened to him?
I know, dude. And can I be honest? Like, from The Crown, he really wanted to modernize the monarchy. So, and it seems like when he walked her down the aisle, it was a walk towards something, don't you think? I know I'm sounding corny, but I agree with you. It looked like a symbol of we're walking towards the future, where there's gospel music and it's accepted. And then everything, like, went so wrong. That should be the tagline. You know, like the cliff.
How it all went so
all
wrong.
went so wrong.
You're listening to Come Back with Erica Cobb. It's myself and Tory Shulman breaking down episode 4 of Harry and Meghan on Netflix.
Oh, that was a good gospel choir.
Okay, so we get more details from the wedding. Elton John performed. They cut the cake with a sword.
The sword.
Land of 1,000 Dances was their first dance. And then we get to the cottage that they lived in.
Oh my gosh. Why was it so small? Dude, he couldn't stand up in it. It was like the Shire. It was like the Hobbit Shire.
Yo.
There's no room.
That, if anything, I know we've said this feels relatable or people can understand this, but everyone who has ever had some, hoity-toity or like whatever your version of hoity-toity or grandiose wedding has had this moment where you have had, like, it's the day of your life, like you can't envision anything better and you got to come back to your apartment.
It was so small. And didn't you think when you hear, what was it, Nottingham Cottage or Northingham or whatever, you picture not that.
No.
Not that.
It was
like Bilbo Baggins lived there.
And Harry's hitting his head everywhere
time.
because he's so tall. Like, I just, man, when I saw that, I was like, every single, like, especially like 20-something or 30, whatever you are, you come back and you're like,
well,
I gotta come back to my sad apartment.
You turn the lights on, well, that's faucet's leaking. Yeah, right. You look around,
what do I do with all these gifts?
Yeah.
Like, so where there's no place for them.
Tiny. And I thought that was nice to see, but man, was I surprised.
Well, also, the difference between the house that Meghan lived in, that was her own home in Toronto.
That she paid for. Right.
And it was so beautiful, the interior decor. And this was like, wah,
It was very, and it had whiskers.
Oh my gosh. When Harry talked about Oprah coming over for tea and she said, well, no one would ever believe this.
That was funny. No one would believe this.
Harry's impression of Oprah.
Very good.
My husband was just walking by at that point and started like belly laughing because that was just so funny.
Yeah, he has a good little impression there.
Yeah. So you talked earlier about the first official engagement with Queen Elizabeth. Meghan talked about how great of a time she had. We had this conversation on Daily Blast
We sure
Live.
did.
About how it really looked like the Queen was not only accepting of Meghan, but really enjoyed her company.
Yes, I have to be clear about this. The Queen never smiles. And if she does, it's like a, as I've done before. And the only other time people have seen her smile, there's a clip, and maybe whoever is clipping this can put this clip in there. She loves animals, and there's a shot of her at a, what do you call it, an animal show, and they brought her cows that she had raised as a child up, and she looks at them and goes, the cows, and she puts on this bright smile, and it's a famous sort of gif, right? And it's the only time. When she was with Meghan, she was a giggling, like, friend. You just didn't see the giggles before, and I thought, look at this fun little friendship that they're having, this. You would never imagine she is worked with Winston Churchill, and now she's giggling with Meghan Markle. I thought it was lovely to see.
In public.
In public, and I also thought their love of dogs, they both love dogs. Of course, the Queen loves corgis, and Meghan loves rescues, and Guy, her beagle, but they have a lot, it's not like they don't have a lot in common in dealing with activism, charities, work. I mean, really, and if you're a dog person, you're going to get along.
Yeah.
Right? Even if you're the Queen of England.
People get along.
Right?
I don't know. Sometimes, y'all, I just want to walk, Spike. I don't need a whole conversation.
See, I need the whole combo.
Yeah, I don't.
I need to know everything.
Necessarily need that. So what I love about this documentary is it's so smartly done because it tells a lot without having directly to say it.
Liz Garbus does that well.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so when we get to Grenfell Fire.
Oh, man.
And the survivors.
Yeah.
and the women at the mosque. This, to me, really showed the turning point of when things started to shift against Meghan and why. Because, of course, it was the 1 year anniversary. They were having a moment of silence for this horrific fire in Grenfell.
Which many blamed on not paying. It was such a hazardous building for people who didn't have a lot. So there was a lot of anger at the government.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's Meghan and the Queen. They're there, they're doing a moment of silence. And what Meghan said is that most people didn't know is that she already had a relationship with so many of the survivors because she had been working in the kitchens with them in order to feed all of these people and came up with this idea to do a cookbook to raise the money.
You know, as soon as she said, they go, we don't want to just have fast food every night in a hotel for months and months and months, these women. And they said, can we cook in the mosque? And they thought, we need more money. And Meghan is the one who came up with the idea of a cookbook. And I thought, if they had just let her be the dang Duchess of Sussex, what else would she have done?
Right.
It just showed, this was her first engagement as a royal subject. And she took it and ran with it.
Yeah.
She ran with it, and she hung out with the women. She did the 3-kiss, which is an intimate kiss. She really could have been something if they had just let her be representative of so many people in the Commonwealth. She would have been so good.
And the ease and the admiration and love that these women clearly had for Meghan and Meghan clearly had for them. And I loved
Genuine.
I loved seeing Meghan and her mother, Doria, like just, it felt so familial.
Absolutely.
And I really appreciated that. But then, you know, obviously they go on this, they start their royal tour.
Yeah.
Now Meghan's pregnant.
Yeah.
And she is beloved.
Yeah. It's just,
much like Princess Diana.
it just reminds you of the Australian tour of Diana. Yeah.
So now she's basically walking exactly in Diana's footsteps. But she became so popular with the public that the internals in the royal family became upset.
Yeah, she said this is so interesting. The real estate changed. The real estate, and I was like, what is she talking about? The magazine covers, the newspaper covers. That is a golden real estate for the principals, or as they call them, the internals, the royal subjects. That is like the prime piece of real estate, and it was all Meghan, much like Diana. And then it goes, that's not there, they turn sour.
When she talked about the engagement, or the engagement with the whole royal family, including the Queen, was there, and they put her on the cover the next morning.
And not the Queen.
Right.
And now she looked at that and said, uh-oh.
And she said, it's not my fault. And Harry said, this is just like my mom.
It's exactly the same.
That it wasn't her fault. She was never looking for it.
Right.
It's like when you are, and we see this with so many, you know, brilliant people. It's just, there is a light that just shines in people. Like, and there's nothing that anyone can do or manufacture or try to outshine. It's just their light shining through.
Right. And why do you think he's attracted to that?
Right.
Why? Why do you think he found the one person out of a gazillion people that would have married him that was shined exactly or shone like his mother? Mm-hmm. He found her again.
Yeah.
I mean, the way she walked in to meet those women, it could have been Diana going into those hospitals, shaking the hand without the glove for an AIDS patient, changing the way we see healthcare. I mean,
and for people, because there was
attracted.
some speculation in the beginning that she was trying to be Diana.
That's fair.
Which is why I think it was so important to paint the picture of who Meghan was and what she was doing before she even knew that Harry really existed as an actual human.
Yeah, you needed that context.
Yeah.
Yeah, or else it could look, I'm trying so hard to be the replicant. She just happened to be that person.
Yeah.
He found her out.
Well, that's when the tropes start. The angry black woman, Monster Markle, Duchess Difficult, gangster royalty.
This is the woo!
Yeah, and even bringing in the women from the mosque and linking it to terrorism. So it's interesting to me how when you're trying to attack someone, specifically someone of color, how quickly it goes to race. Like, that is, to me, it's like, if you think that the thing that makes them less than, the thing that makes them not worthy, and it automatically goes to racist tropes, what does that say about you?
And the culture.
Right.
The whole culture, because they knew that would be received in a certain way. And accepted in a certain way. It's a great point. It was the easy way out. It was the fast way out. It was the most damaging way out. And in some ways, it leaves us now to this moment with you and me seeing really behind the curtain of the British monarchy.
Yeah.
If they hadn't done that, right? If they had gone after, let's say, her being so spoiled or her being whatever, something else, not about race, this could be more of a nuanced conversation. But they flat out went racist. So now we're here.
I also think that the timing of that was interesting as well, because not that, I mean, we have racist issues, racial issues in the United States, of course, but in a public, it's almost like in a public setting, there still is like social
norms.
Right.
Yeah.
For professional settings. This is a professional setting. And for you to put it out there.
Right.
And not only put it out there like once, but make it actually the foundation from which you quote unquote report your news.
Yeah, that's their lens.
And that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, we're not talking, by the way, nuanced things. We're talking about pictures of chimpanzees. Like, we're talking about, like, I'm just saying, I don't want people to be like, some people come back, and I've heard this on my Twitter, oh, you guys, there was no racism, I can't tell you how vulgar and blatant it was.
Yeah.
And if you don't know that and you think we're kind of like saying it was vague, it wasn't. It wasn't vague. This was racism that was like crazy headlines.
Yeah.
I don't think work in America even.
I always find that conversation, it's not really a conversation, it's just something that really pisses me off. Because, I mean,
you hear that, don't you?
Inevitably, once a week, someone
It's
gets
not about
their
race.
stanky fingers,
Ooh, those fingers.
fixes their Twitter and IG fingers to tell me that I'm making something about race.
Yeah.
Guess what? I am not making it about anything.
Right.
I'm just simply calling it for what it is. And I also cannot stand the idea, if someone tells me that they were hurt or offended by something, I'm not going to say, no, you weren't.
Right.
You know, I wouldn't, regardless of how small, how minuscule, I'm not going to say you weren't, because that's their feeling. And it's coming from whatever their experience is. So for anyone to fix their mouth to tell me as a Black woman that I can't feel something based on what my experiences are, my experiences have deduced a conclusion that you, as a non-person of color, will never understand. So it's one thing to say, can you explain to me
how this is?
Yes, perhaps I'm missing something.
Sure.
And that's my ignorance. Can you explain to me how you're getting here? Now, keep in mind, I'm a very busy person. I don't have time to explain every single racist thing
Erica, how could
that
you
we
not?
talk about or happens.
No.
But if it were in a situation, in an intimate setting where someone's like, I am so sorry, just tell me, give me the backstory of this. And it's something that is considered more, I'm not going to say casually racist, because racism isn't casual to me at all, but maybe a unconscious bias, then I would have that conversation.
Sure.
Well, this is why.
Right.
But never should you tell someone that that is not what it is. Because to me, it's you saying, this is acceptable for me in my life, in my circle. Just by you saying that alone, I already know that you do this, and now you're offended because I'm saying that it's racist. You cannot tell me that something is or is not racist if you haven't understood racism through the lens of people who actually have experienced it. I'm completely going off on a tangent about that, but that's something.
Yeah, I have the privilege of learning about racism because I don't have to experience racism. That is a privilege. I can learn about it, but I don't experience that, and that's a difference that, like, if you don't get that, you don't get that.
Well, exactly. But you know what, Tori? I have the privilege of learning about anti-Semitism.
That's right.
Because I don't experience
that.
anti-Semitism.
It's with every marginal group. That's exactly right.
So, yeah.
That's exactly right.
I just had to throw that out
I
there.
liked it. I caught it.
So, after all of this gaslighting, because that's
Institutionalized
exactly what it
gaslighting,
is.
right.
Exactly. So her friends are saying Meghan's disappearing inside of herself.
Yeah, it got bad.
She's starting to think about taking her own life. And obviously, we had a major event happen this week. We learned that Twitch, who was the DJ on Ellen, he's from So You Think You Can Dance. He took his life at 40 years old. We understand that suicide and suicidal ideology can affect anyone at any time. So this coming out this week almost had an even more of a significance because it was so fresh.
Yeah. I also think, look, let's just say suicide in America has become, especially with teenagers, an epidemic. And our show in particular, if you haven't watched it, check out DBL. It is at least being discussed more and more. And I don't say this lightly. I am pleased only to see it being brought up in conversation and pop culture like this, in which people are open, transparent, only because that brings stigma. It cracks stigmas. But man, it was like that episode hit really hard after this week. I was like, wow.
And then I love that Harry acknowledged that he did what his training, his royal training taught him to do was, okay, but we still need to do this.
We got to be there on time at the parties.
Exactly.
At that thing, right.
And he said he hates himself for it. And I thought that was such a human moment to look back on your actions from the past, which I think is a theme here. And we can all benefit from doing that. And just simply saying, like, man, I really messed up in that moment. You know, I should have done better.
Yeah.
I should have known better. But how was he to know when, even when his mother passed away, he didn't even get therapy for that?
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. That's a theme I've been watching from Harry from the start of this documentary, in that, like, accountability of his unconscious bias, of things that he did in the past, of what he could have done better, of the situation with his wife. He's like, I acted like a royal Harry and not a husband Harry. I like the guy because he takes accountability, and everyone can do a bit better. That man tells you when he's learned something. Yeah. And I appreciate that, because sometimes I'm a little like, you're too proud to. And he just says, I didn't know. And he didn't know. It's not like we expected him to know, but he can still feel crappy about it.
Right.
You know?
So basically, all of this culminates in the Fab Four splitting.
Yeah.
And I thought that this was another sense that Harry felt that he was very much betrayed by his brother.
I think this started the whole William part.
Yeah, that he and William had essentially made a pact that their comms teams would not work against each other, like trading stories to sell each other out.
Which is common.
Right. And Harry is essentially saying that he never did that, but William broke that pact.
Yeah, this was the start of it. Just, I don't know, it felt as if he and William, out of 2 people out of 8 billion in this world, or 7 billion in this world, were the only 2 people on earth that could have made that pact because of what they both went through. And I didn't know each principal or royal subject had their own comms office. And they would often just fight with each other. And it feels like a board game of, like, people, it sort of just seems a bit trivial, right? Yeah. But those 2 stuck it out, and were always going to never have their offices go against each other. Every time he brought up William, I watched Meghan's face really carefully, and there's just a sort of expressionless, she kind of just goes blank there. I think there's just a lot of anger to William.
This is where I said, not only did their paths before they met each other bring them together, but there's a pattern here. Meghan's half-sister betrays her.
Oh my God, I didn't even think about this.
Harry's brother betrays him.
I didn't even think about this.
Meghan's father betrays her, sells her out.
The sibling
Prince Charles,
the parallels are crazy.
There's all of these things, and the mothers.
Yeah.
whether they're still with us
Right.
or not,
As the savior.
are for both of them.
For both. Wow. The exact same family dynamic.
Exactly.
Wow, that's crazy.
You're listening to Come Back with Erica Cobb. We're breaking down episode 4 of the Harry and Meghan Netflix special. Okay, so let's talk about what about her friends? Because her friend Abby.
Abigail Spencer, by the way, brilliant actress.
Yes.
Watch Rectify. She's so good in that. Sorry, go ahead.
I said yes, but I honestly have not seen. She seems
She's
like she would be a fabulous actress.
phenomenal
I don't know.
actress, Abigail Spencer, and a good person, but a phenomenal actress.
So they decide that they are going to throw Meghan a baby shower in New York City. And I love how Harry and Meghan throw shade. They throw the best shade.
What do you mean?
Because they say it so, they call a fact so matter-of-factly that you have to take a second to realize that you were shaded. Meghan straight up was like, these independent, successful women choose to use their money,
I saw that,
not taxpayer money, to throw a baby shower for their friend, and now you're trying to ruin it? Like, and all of those headlines were very misogynistic because these women, hello, her best friends are very highly successful, powerful women. Of course she's taking private jets and having penthouse baby showers.
Yeah, like Serena Williams was there.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, maybe you don't know Abigail Spencer, but like these are very, she played with the big ones. I mean, she was up there. I mean, she was a rising star and she kept company that was up there. I loved that she called that out. No taxpayers' money.
Exactly.
These people did it on their own dime.
And not only did they do that, but then Abby decides that she's going to call her friend at People magazine, and she's going to do basically like they're going to do a tell-all about who Meghan truly is.
Right.
What did you think about that? Because we actually covered that story, and there was a lot of speculation. Was Meghan behind it? Like all of this stuff.
I think it backfired. Only because it did look like she was behind it in a way to counteract what was going on. And she wasn't. I get it that she was. Abigail says it very clearly. The friends came together to clearly do this. But as we see later, and we'll get to that in certain ways, it just became a bit of an obstacle to get over. I don't know if they should have spoken more to Meghan about it and if she wanted that. I don't know. I also didn't know if People magazine was the right place to do it at.
I felt like at the time, I really didn't care if Meghan knew about it or didn't know about it, was behind it or not. I think that was the first time that the national conversation, because it was almost as if for people who weren't paying attention to what was happening in, the British media, it almost made us talk about it more, because after the wedding, we would talk about it from here and there, but it brought up the reasons why we needed to have this.
It opened
and I
the conversation.
remember, and I remember having the conversation on DBL, and there were people who were definitely on both sides of the story. Like, oh, do we need to hear about, she's a princess, this, oh, that. And I just felt like, first of all, we knew that she had a very good, close, loyal friend group. And what do you do for a friend in terms of trying to protect them when you aren't physically there, when you aren't able to penetrate what's causing them pain?
But see, I think that's where the American problem happened. And in the American world, you hurt someone and you're famous, you do go to the editor of People magazine and you do bind together and make this. I just don't think it was received well in the British world.
But see, I think that was the point where it didn't matter how it was received in the UK. It mattered that people understood what was happening to her. So I really felt like, I think I've always felt like that was kind of a turning point of public perception to have that conversation, because of course not everyone in the US was like, oh no, poor Meghan.
Right, they didn't get it.
It certainly was a time where it made you think, like, what is happening?
Right, right.
And what really broke my heart so much, because when we had this conversation, like when we're talking about it in daytime television, I had convinced myself that she was completely shielded, that this was not even something like, as if, I don't know, maybe I thought she was in prison. Turns out she was.
No, like way worse. Yeah.
But maybe I thought that she was royal and they don't have access to like the internet. I don't know.
Like she was in a tower?
I don't know what I thought. I thought
She had ravens?
I just kind of felt like she wasn't absorbing this. Like there was some type of a layer there.
Mm-hmm.
And to know that sometimes like the worst things that were said about them and perpetuated, they saw the worst versions of it the first thing they saw. And that, when they were describing those moments, that really broke my heart so much, because I don't care. And then it also turned out they were living in a shack.
Like, a hut. Like a hut.
Well, they were living in a cottage.
It was a lovely cottage on the Kensington grounds.
Yeah. But they weren't living the way
we
that
think they
we
were.
thought they
That's
were
right.
living.
Right.
Like she wasn't like in some gilded cage.
And there wasn't ladies in waiting. There was no
Right.
help. Or there wasn't a lot of help there.
Right. So I think just to know that you're getting like, you're muzzled, you're completely out of your element, you're tucked away, and you're getting all of this stuff coming at you, talking about who you are from people who don't even know you. It really just broke my heart. Like, it made me feel so bad.
Yeah, just to me, it made her. It was just like, how isolated could you get? She just got lonelier and lonelier, and they became an island unto themselves.
Yeah.
And then they went to an actual island, which we'll get to. But if you know depressed people, their world just gets very, very, very small. And whether she knew it or not, it was zooming in real close, and it got dangerously small.
Well, then baby Archie is born.
Little baby Archie.
I love there's a black prince.
That nanny.
I just love
Lauren, that was her name. Yeah.
I mean, so,
she was great.
Okay, before we get to Lauren, we talk about the baby announcement. We
Yeah.
all know about that damn brown door.
I wrote this down.
If somebody says one more thing about that damn brown door,
Now,
go ahead.
You're going to get killed, because that brown door represents a lot to a lot of people in Britain, and I can understand that. If you don't know, that's the Lido wing. I hope I'm saying that wrong, right. And for many years, every time they have a new baby, they walk out that nursery maternity ward door, and it's like seconds after they have the baby. Like, it's not a very easy time. Diana was all flushed. Kate Middleton had to do it, and it's very uncomfortable for these women, but it's tradition.
Right.
And so for her to have broken that tradition, and she did it at the palace and introduced Archie Lovely. But man, I was like, she is walking into a nightmare with this.
Okay, well, people can come for me about their brown door, because I'm going to be real clear. Come for me about the brown door, because my concern is about the brown mama. And we all, no, seriously,
I know.
We all know about black maternal health. We all know that black women are more likely to die during childbirth.
3 times more likely in America
than their white counterparts.
Absolutely.
And the idea that she had gone through her pregnancy with a doctor that she trusted.
I liked hearing that.
And she wanted to be with that doctor regardless of what hospital she was at.
Yeah.
Was more important to me than the brown door.
I agree, but don't you think, Erica, this was the line in this to me was a line in the sand. And it seems subtle, but her not doing it at the brown door and her doing it at where she wanted to because she felt safe was her telling, in what the British subjects feel, in many of them, that she was saying, I'm more important than the job. Like my health, and she is.
Yeah,
like clearly that's a ridiculous statement.
Yeah.
But to many British people that I've spoken to, they are somewhat of a commodity in a way of they aren't people. They are our, what was it? We pay you, now pose.
Yeah.
We dance. And it's a very weird thing to think, but that's how it feels is we're supporting you and you can't even pose in front of that door.
Yeah, no.
There was a line in the sand she drew. It was subtle, but that was a big one.
Yeah, my life.
Versus,
which is,
right.
I mean, completely any black woman who is pregnant has had this or thinking about getting pregnant has thought about this.
Especially which doctor you pick.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I don't care about the brown door.
Yeah.
I care about the brown mama.
Brown
and
mama.
I will die on that hill.
That's fair.
I don't want to die
There
on that
shouldn't
hill.
be a
but
hill.
like,
There's
I mean,
no hill.
I will die on that hill. So I put Danny Baker, whoever the bleep he is, but it turns out that he had a show on the BBC. He was let go because of a tweet that he sent out that showed a couple holding a chimp on stairs saying the royal family or the royal couple leaving the hospital with their baby. He was let go from the BBC for what, like 2 weeks, and then hired back. Like, and how do we say that that wasn't blatantly racist?
Yeah, that's what I mean. When I again, if you want to debate us, that's fine, or debate and have that debate. But if we're seeing chimpanzee pictures, it's hard for me to take you seriously that this wasn't racial. And it spread like wildfire. This wasn't like a, oh my God, Mr. Baker, what are you doing? This was like click, retweet, retweet, retweet. Like it was part of the language. And again, do your research if you don't think it was racial, because that was appalling. That was like the first thing right after they introduced Archie.
And Harry said it was the first thing that he saw.
Yeah. The very first thing he saw. Can you imagine?
I can, but I can't.
I think he was surprised. I think it caught him off guard.
Well, I think.
Do you?
I do believe that it caught him off guard. It's interesting because we had this conversation on an earlier podcast about how we as a society are really ill prepared for the conversation about, in the next couple of decades, the demographic will be predominantly mixed race. And a part of that lack of preparation is that we are merging cultures and races, and you cannot understand the experience of someone else even if you love them more than you love anyone else in this world. And to me, that's what I took away from that moment, is he would no doubt give his life. I mean, he in some respects did give his life for this woman. But in terms of what the lived experience of who she is as a Black woman, and I will also say this, a lot of people, a lot of Black women, and I'm opening this up and leaving space for this, have said, I struggle with the idea that she lived her whole life not acknowledging her Blackness, and then when it stared her in the face, she rose to this occasion to step up, to stand up as a woman of color. When she identified, almost the back and forth is, now that it affects you, now you're going to champion something that you don't even have a lived experience for.
I see. Okay.
Because you were never forced to live that experience. And I think that is a very important statement.
Yeah.
I think that it's very critical that people have room to say that breathes, because I can understand that.
I'd never heard that before. That's a reasonable, if not very cautious, tiptoeing. That seems like a reasonable thing to think.
I don't even think it's a tiptoe thing. I think it's just a matter of fact. But I think it really depends on the lens from which you are absorbing and processing this story. Because there's so many different pieces that you can take away from this. There's so many different things that you can focus on. For me, I'm looking at it as a woman who was put in a situation, who we grow to understand some of the biggest names in the world have not experienced the type of harassment and threats and vitriol that these two people have been forced to experience because they chose to fall in love. And when we're having this conversation, or when I sit down to watch this documentary, that's where my mind is. It's not on the fact that she's a biracial woman, so to speak, and that experience. I can't speak to that experience because I'm not a biracial woman. But I do have this very innate sense, and I think a lot of Black women will say, yeah, that's very Black woman of you to have this sense of protection, to defend. And so I think that there's room for both of those conversations, but I do want to acknowledge that that sentiment is out there because I do think it's an important one. And I don't think that that's disparaging Meghan.
No.
I think it's just a fact of people who have lived, like myself, in the experience of being a Black woman our whole lives.
Yeah, right.
You know, that deserves room to breathe too.
That's just a fair conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a really fair conversation. And one that, might I add, if you're listening, Miss Markle, just kidding, that she herself, I think, would be encouraged to have. I don't think she would shy away from that. I agree with you. But that's a complicated, she found herself in the middle of a place in which she was sort of forced to face it when she wasn't forced to face it in America.
Yeah.
Which is just an interesting place for her to have to be.
Well, that was a sidebar. You're listening to Come Back with Erica Cobb. I have my girl Tory Shulman here, and we are wrapping up episode 4 of Harry and Meghan on Netflix. We met Lauren that you referred to, Lauren Kumalo, the former nanny.
She was so funny.
She says she got a ticket racing to find Harry and Meghan
She
to be their
remembers that
daddy.
ticket. And she goes, he came out barefoot and I had bought a new pair of Clark's shoes.
Yeah. She was styling and profiling.
That's right.
But the way that she described them, I thought was important because it really showed you, like, the way that Meghan said she didn't realize that the formalities from the outside continued into the inside, but in their home,
It
which
did
at
not.
this point they had moved to off the estate.
Right. Frogmore.
Yeah. And so it showed that she and he had determined that they would have the formalities end at the front door.
Yeah, very much so.
Which I loved. Then we get to Cape Town 2019. Now this was the tour
Yeah, this was interesting.
that blew everything wide open.
Yeah.
And Meghan made a point of saying that this was sanctioned by the royal family.
Right.
So when she's talking to Tom, the Africa documentarian, and said,
She's in the trench coat outfit?
yes.
That brown beige outfit that looks so cute? Okay.
Yeah.
I have a lot to say about, well, I don't have a lot. I'm confused about this. Go ahead.
Well, it's interesting how it was put together, especially knowing that there was so much resistance to the Harry and Meghan superstar of it all. Because we saw her, even in this documentary, talking or saying a Maya Angelou quote.
Yeah.
When a woman stands up, she stands for all women.
yeah.
And this is me paraphrasing Maya Angelou, don't get mad at me. And then she stood up for herself by just speaking her truth in a moment that seemed to be a one-off, and thanked Tom for asking her how she was feeling because no one ever really asked her.
Yeah. I thought this was great, and I commented on a DBL when this happened, like, what a human moment to be like, thanks, no one's really asked me. I have a hard time believing she didn't think that moment was going to go super viral. And she says, I thought it was going to be part of maybe the commentary of this documentary. I didn't think it was a big thing. But for her to be at that superstar level and for her to say, it's been a struggle, am I right? And she says, yes. It's hard for me to know and to think that wouldn't have been her way of speaking out.
So,
If that makes sense.
so you think that
There was no way that wasn't going to get noticed. There was no way. And she, my way of seeing her as a speaker and an orator, she had to have, in my mind, known that was a major thing. Because she went off the grid. She went off prompter. She went off what is so organized for the royal family.
okay, yeah, no, that's not right. I'm like, Tori, you are wrong.
And that's fair. I just have a hard time believing
Well-
she didn't think that would blow up.
Girl,
I really do.
we literally spend 4 hours a day in front of a live camera. You remember everything that you say?
No, but I'm not the Duchess. I'm not the Duchess of Sussex.
Girl,
No, but she
it
was like,
doesn't matter.
I think
the
it does.
human mind doesn't think like that. When you are in a situation where someone is asking you questions unprompted, he went off script.
I agree, but
And she just answered in the truth. What was she supposed to do? She had been authentic that entire time.
I'm not saying she shouldn't have said it. I think it was great that she said it. In fact, it was probably the most real thing she had said. What I take issue with is her claiming, I had no idea that me saying it was that much of a struggle would not have shown up in the British media and blown up like the
I don't
like the
even
forest
think
fire
she
it was.
remembers saying it.
I disagree.
Girl.
She's too good. How many
No.
times? She says very little about it. Oh, thank you. And
Child.
at that moment, she opened up. You don't think that moment she realized that could go?
She just thanked the man for saying, for asking.
She also said, so you can say it's been a struggle. And she said, yes. You don't say that. You don't. And she's known that. She was taught that. I'm not saying it's wrong.
There's a difference between your home training or your royal training and having a conversation with someone off the cuff.
Not
Plus,
really.
The fact that it was sanctioned by the royal family. So of course she would think there's no way that's going to make it. It was sanctioned by them. If they were going to have this conversation or put this documentary out, that would have made them look bad. So I wouldn't have thought that it would have made it anyway. I think that she was constantly asking for someone to listen to her
I
at
don't
some
disagree.
point.
I don't disagree with that.
And she just said it again.
I don't
like
disagree.
She had probably said it a million times
But you can't
before.
say off the cuff and the princess because you can't be both.
Girl,
You
she's a human being. I think that's the whole point of this documentary.
I agree with you, and I agree she should have said it, and she is a human being. But to not know that would have stood out like a sore thumb amongst all the other things is, I think, naive.
Maybe stood out, but also been squashed like all of her feelings before.
I don't know.
Okay, we got to get out of here.
Oh, it's hot in here.
It literally is. We are in
very
front
warm.
of this fireplace, and it is hot. All right, thank you for listening to Come Back with Erica Cobb, episode 4 recap of the Harry and Meghan docuseries with my girl Tory Shulman. As always, leave us a review, send us a tweet. We are going to be back with episode 5. So we'll see you then. And as always, you can get the full podcast on comeback.tv/podcast.
Cheerio.